Welcome to TheGrill's Spotlight Conversation with Strauss Zelnick, the CEO of Take-Two Interactive, and Phil Spencer, the head of Microsoft's Xbox. The gaming industry continues its steady rise on the entertainment landscape. The COVID pandemic gave an already enormous industry even more adrenaline. In 2018, for example, the global gaming market was worth about $115 billion. It grew to $131 billion in 2020, and this year that number is expected to surpass $138 billion. We are lucky to have two of the most consequential figures in the gaming industry with us today to talk about how gaming has grown and why and where the industry can go from here. Strauss Zelnick is chairman and CEO of Take-Two Interactive, a developer, publisher, and marketer of video games, including Grand Theft Auto and NBA 2K. In his role, Strauss is driven by Take-Two's mission to be the most innovative, creative, and efficient entertainment company in the world. Phil Spencer is the head of Xbox and the executive vice president of gaming at Microsoft. In this role, Phil leads Microsoft's massive gaming business across all devices and services. He began his career as an intern at Microsoft in 1988 and has worked his way up, serving as the company's corporate vice president of Microsoft Studios and general manager of Microsoft Game Studios, EMEA. Welcome to you, Phil and Strauss.
Thanks for having us, Sharon. It's great to be
two titans with us, and it took some doing to get you guys together, and we had hoped to do it in person, and COVID put a crimp in that, but it doesn't seem to be putting a crimp in either of your businesses. So gaming has been on fire since COVID began. It's been one of the biggest windfalls to your business in the history of gaming. Strauss, your revenue rose to a stunning $3.4 billion last year and continues to have a really strong 2021. Phil, for you, gaming revenue last quarter rose by $357 million, which represents an 11% increase year over year to $3.7 billion. Your businesses are not new. These are amazing growth numbers. Is this growth sustainable?
Thanks, Sharon, and I appreciate the setup. And certainly, it's always nice to start with all the great news. And there is a lot of great news in our business. But I think the short answer to the question is, or the relatively short answer is, interactive entertainment is the fastest growing part of the global entertainment business. That's been true for some time. That ought to continue for the next 10 or 20 years because our cohort continues to grow. Because the business isn't that old. The business is about 35 years old. The average age of a gamer is 37 or 38. And as people turn a year older, they don't stop playing games. They may play different games, but they don't stop playing. And yet new people come into the cohort. So until the average age of a video game consumer looks like the average age of every other kind of entertainment consumer, you would expect naturally for the cohort to grow. Now that's great news for Microsoft because they really participate in the entire ecosystem. For us, it's less good news because we still have to make hits. So the good news is we have the wind at our back and that should continue. The other news is, every day we have to show up and do it again. We got to, create the best titles and we have to market them to consumers and we have to engage with consumers. And the minute we stop doing that effectively, it really won't matter if the market's doing well, we won't do well. So our work is cut out for us and we don't take our success for granted.
Phil, what do you think? How do you take this kind of windfall moment?
Yeah, as usual, Strauss has a good grasp of where our industry is. He's been a leader in this industry for a long time, and it's great to hear his perspective. I think the truth is this industry has been growing by double digits for many years. And yes, when we found people isolated, their friends, they could no longer see their friends in person, gaming really became a platform for people to not only entertain and find some diversion, but really the social connection that gaming also offers. And during COVID and lockdown, we saw that strength accelerate, but not accelerate from a baseline of zero. Like it was already, the business is not only is the business growing, but as Strauss talked about, the global usage of gaming continues to grow. 3 billion people on the planet play video games today. There are 7 billion people on the planet, about 4 or 5 connected to the internet, and over half the connected world's playing video games. And what we look at as the opportunity is, how do we continue to bring the amazing content that teams like Strauss's create to more people on the planet through technology innovation, distribution innovation, business model innovation. I think those capabilities will continue to show growth in this industry for decades to come. So I'm completely in agreement with Strauss. Absolutely.
You think the growth is sustainable then? I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it predates COVID. When you look at the growth that's been there, and it has become the number one form of entertainment and social connection for a new generation. When you see games like Minecraft, what happens to be one of our games, you see games like Fortnite, you look at something like with the longevity of GTA Online, which is a game now that's been out there for years. And as I said, it's as much a competition and kind of a game as it is a social connection. There's now modes of GTA where people go online and they play a complete role model world where the original game mechanic is not even actually the thing that people are focused on. There's emergent gameplay that the community creates. These things almost become self-perpetuating. The teams have to do a lot of work to make that possible, but it just shows the longevity in this art form, and I think there are many years to come.
Well, were you surprised, either of you, at how gaming became it just expanded overall, right? I think that's what the data says to us about what happened during COVID. Not only did people play more, but more people tried it out.
Were we surprised? Yes, about the pandemic, I was surprised. I mean, I think when March 20, hit and the stock market went down 40% overnight, I think I was very concerned that we were going to be in the beginning of a long consumer recession or depression. And in recessions or depressions, entertainment is not immune. I mean, people love to believe that it is, but typically it isn't. However,
meaning like people would play what they had, but they wouldn't spend more money on it, kind of thing.
I didn't even know how people would respond at all. It just seemed to me that if we were heading into a terrible retrenchment economically, that would affect everyone, because it usually does. And what happened, of course, is there was a lot of government stimulus right away, and people were at home, and they turned their attention to the diversions that you can easily engage with at home. And as Phil said, and I think it's a crucial point, obviously linear television also benefited in the pandemic, as you know, meaningfully. Viewing was way up, but interactive entertainment was up more because of the social aspects. And people love to consume entertainment with other people, with their family and friends. We watch television shows with our family. We go to the movies with family and friends. We go to theme parks with other people. The entertainment experience doesn't change, but our connection to it changes when we can share it with someone else. Video games in the past few years have become kind of the prototypical way to do that digitally, where you can connect with friends and communities and new friends and new communities all around the world while you're engaging with and enjoying the entertainment that we all create. And we were just so well suited to a pandemic where people felt lonely, and they were alone. And suddenly they could engage with really amazing entertainment and also talk to people and play with people or compete against people. And then I think, having done that, I think it opened a lot of people's eyes. To your point, Sharon, I think there were people who said, "Well, I haven't played games in a while. I'll give it a try," and they were blown away.
I think for us, one of the challenges for us is we also have hardware and creating hardware. And I remember as Strauss is talking about, in March of 20, we were going through the same analysis as both an industry and as a company, thinking about what's going to happen. And the first thing that happened is all the existing consoles in market sold out. And we were 6 months from our next generation. Not only us, but Sony was at the same.
Were you surprised though when that happened? Because I was surprised.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we were. And as unlike software, that's kind of infinitely, you can duplicate. Hardware doesn't have that capability, and we were coming into the end of a generation and the beginning of the next generation.
You'd think people would wait, right?
That's right. Well, and for us, we had no ability to replan. So, trying to get new hardware at that point when we knew the next generation was started. And now we're like 6 to 9 months into the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and S being out there. And we're still seeing, demand significantly outpacing supply, really for all of us. And I just think it shows both how, as Strauss talks about, the social dynamic of gaming has just accelerated. We've had literally hundreds of millions of new friend connections, which is the kind of peer-to-peer, person-to-person connection that's made on our network, newly created during the pandemic. And now you see hardware continuing to be in such high demand. I wish we could build more. Like that's the challenge. But in terms of the surprise, yeah, we didn't know it was going to happen. Thinking about what a consumer, how they're going to retrench, but gaming really provides amazing value when you think about the hours of entertainment for dollars spent. And it did, the hardware surprise was there. And I think we're still kind of working through that as an industry.
Does that chip shortage affect
that little chip thing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's thinking about running Xbox. I figure most of my challenge is on creativity and team dynamics, and now it's turned into supply chain management is probably the biggest part of my job. And not only can we get things built, but not to complain about the shipping issues of how do you actually get things delivered to the markets where the products is needed. You have all of these real life issues, and these are human issues that people are dealing with. And shipping game consoles is not the most important thing on the planet, but it does impact us as we're trying to get more sockets out there. Teams like Strauss's and others have games that work across multiple generations of consoles, so it's great that players can still play on the devices that are out there. But yeah, it's a lot of work managing the supply chain of both getting things built and shipped to the markets that want them.
Although, it's sort of what I describe as a high-class problem. I'd rather have, lots of demand and a constrained supply than the other way around.
Yeah.
And it also actually is really good for this generation of consoles because consumers begin to see something as a rare good that's exciting to have. And I think that'll be a benefit over the long haul. And as Phil said, look, we make our products available on all meaningful platforms to the extent that we can. And if we have to be a little more patient about the installed base of Gen 9, then we will be. We're not really worried about it. We're not worried about it.
And I'm not up on this stuff. Is the chip problem still a problem?
Yeah, I think it's probably too isolated to talk about it as just a chip problem.
Okay.
I think
the depth of my knowledge about this.
No, it's not at all about depth of knowledge. It's just when I think about what does it mean to get the parts necessary to build a console today and then get it to the markets where the demand is, there are multiple kind of pinch points in that process. And I think regretfully, it's going to be with us for months and months to go, definitely through the end of this calendar year and into the next calendar year. The thing that's most disappointing is just the fan disappointment. People really want this new generation of consoles, as Strauss talks about. They're good consoles, both from us and the other platform holders, and they want the new functionality. We're working hard to bring them to market, but it's going to be a challenge that we'll work through for quite a while.
But again, put it in context, Sharon.
Yeah.
Before these consoles launched, Phil and I and our peers were all asked, what do you think is going to happen? Are people going to want them? So having answered that question in the affirmative, we're still in a good place. Because
demand is not a problem.
I mean, it really, when I answered that question, and Phil will recall this, I said, I certainly think they're great consoles and people will want them, but you don't know until they ship. So the fact that, we've proven, despite the parity among different forms of technology, and there are numerous forms of tech that get to consumers now, they still value these dedicated consoles.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. All right, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I'd say really quickly, and even with all that, in our first fiscal year, we shipped more of this generation of consoles than we have any previous Xbox generation. So we can talk about the supply. It really is, demand is significantly higher. And it's a good thing for the long-term trajectory of this industry, because once those consoles get into the homes, they get used and people want new and amazing entertainment experiences on them.
Yeah, I want to touch on the point that about console-based gaming versus mobile, which we talk about gaming at almost every Grill conference, and really the focus had been for a long time. Strauss was at the Grill a couple of years ago. We were expanding our focus on gaming, but we had previously really been talking about mobile and Twitch and mobile and Twitch. Those were like the hot new areas. And Twitch, I think, does bring it back to social because it's about creating community around playing games. And so I think the question for me is like, it's amazing that your companies that are really not rooted in those that cutting edge piece of gaming are still creating community and finding new audiences and more engagement as a result of that. So I just would love for you guys. And by the way, we had we had Joanna Ferries on here last year. We had a huge debate about gaming is the new social media. It was like we talked for like a very intense hour about that. And so now that feels like it's even more true now than it was a year ago. Can you guys just give me your thoughts about sort of how that's developing and where that's going?
Yeah, I'll start. This will sound cliche, but what we find is gamers play games. And gamers will play games on the device that they have. And I know from the outside, people try to segment, like there's mobile games and there's console games and there's PC games. And in the end, people like to play games. They like to stay connected to the community that they play with, regardless of what device they're on. And the business model diversity and genre diversity in our art form just continues to go up, with free to play as a big kind of way that games get monetized, retail, post-sale transactions, subscriptions are growing. I think you'll see advertising growing as a way of monetizing gaming content. And that when you get the diversity of creative, of business model and distribution, the segmentation of what's a mobile game, what's a console game, what's a PC game, I think starts to blur. I mean, one of our biggest games is Minecraft. And when more people play Minecraft on a mobile phone than any other device, the game was first created on a PC and then came to console. Is it a mobile game? Is it a console game? In the end, it's a game that people want to play. Fortnite's a similar game. You think about something like a GTA. I can play that on my PC. I can play it on consoles, and through streaming and other things, there's other ways that kind of content can hit multiple screens. So I think the segmentation by device will probably break down as we go forward. It's really going to be about the genre of entertainment that we have, the business models that support the different creative outlets that creators want to use, and making sure that community and that content isn't available on as many screens as possible. And that's our goal.
Strauss, you want to talk about
just jumping back to your point about Twitch and community. I think we did have a sense early on that there was something really exciting ahead of us, because when, like a lot of the people who are executives in this business, I've been in the interactive entertainment business for longer than I care to say. I left 20th Century Fox to go to become the pre-revenue CEO of a tiny little video game startup in 1993. So I guess
that's such a great story.
And that, we started making standalone products that we thought people would consume in the way that, and they did consume the way they consumed motion pictures at the time. But we've had a sense here that, for as long as I've been involved with Take-Two, which is now over 14 years, that there was something very different ahead of us. And in fact, we were an early investor in Twitch for that reason. And we began to believe that interactive entertainment is a different experience than linear entertainment, because it does have this element of competition. And it does have an element of engagement that reflects the competition, and it's open-ended in many instances. It doesn't necessarily start and end in a period of time. It can go on forever. Minecraft can go on forever. GTA Online can go on forever. So what you're seeing now is, when Twitch first came up, and I was super excited about it, but the question would be posed by, in the traditional entertainment perspective of, I don't get it. Why would people want to watch stuff about playing video games? Why would people want to watch people play them and talk about them? And the answer is, I don't know. Why do people want to go to basketball games? The same exact question can be posed. Basketball is a game. Like, I am sure initially when basketball started,
you're watching live people, Strauss. That's a difference.
You're doing the exact same thing when you're watching Twitch, and what actually is the motivation is you love this thing, and to see people who are really good at it do it is really exciting. But that doesn't apply to motion pictures. Like, I am not interested in watching you, Sharon, much as I love you, watch a movie, even though I know you're really good at watching movies.
I'm so good at watching movies. And in fact, it's true that sort of so far this idea of like, take plot line A, or do you want plot line B? Like that really has not taken off at all.
It's never going to take off because they're different experiences.
Yeah.
Linear entertainment relies on the suspension of disbelief. Whether you believe it or not, even if you're watching something totally fantastic, you are in a moment where you are being told a story, and for it to resonate with you creatively, you have to believe that story, crazy as it may be. With interactive entertainment, you are the creator. You are involved. You're in the driver's seat. You want to be. You see it differently. As soon as you give people a choose your adventure opportunity in a motion picture, you know what it does? It ruins the motion picture because you've destroyed that suspension of disbelief. Now I get to choose, how can I believe this story? So even though I sometimes think, I'm watching White Lotus and I kind of would, kind of like something else to happen, or Ozark, I'd really like something else to happen.
Don't make us start talking about White Lotus because we're going to be here all day, but okay.
But if I get to make something else happen, I can no longer believe in it. It can't be real for me in that moment. Whereas Grand Theft Auto Online is real for you because of your engagement in it.
Right. So then does that translate the other way around? And that's why we don't see more gaming getting into entertainment, because the people who are passionate about Grand Theft Auto are not interested in an experience that's a suspension of disbelief?
I think, it's a really good point. I think it's more about execution, frankly. And I think derivative properties are always complicated. They have to be really great.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the entire movie industry of today. So you think they could make Pirates of the Caribbean into a movie? I mean, really?
They have to be great. And the great expressions succeed and the poor expressions do not.
I think the business value, market value in today's top tier gaming intellectual property is so high that for us, whenever we look at doing something in the linear space, we're very, very cautious, because the downside to us of diminishing where the brand sits and kind of the economic and creative capability of interactive entertainment, that we look at those linear opportunities. Frankly, the economics usually don't match the economics that we have today in running the business that we do. So we look at them almost more like exposure and marketing opportunities. And then, as Strauss says, the execution's got to be incredibly high, because if I ever looked at it as, I'm doing a lunch pail or pajamas or something, like I'm just exploiting the IP that I have, it'll start the downfall of these big franchises that we have. So I think as IP holders, it's hard for us, because we know the sweet spot of interactive entertainment where players have agency and actually what happens on screen and the value in that. And other exploitations, frankly, I'm not an expert in it. And I just know the value that we have in the interactive entertainment space and the growth that this business has.
We look at it the same way.
So interesting. Yeah, no, it's so interesting, because I would think if anybody could kind of figure that out, Strauss, would be you, since you really do have a deep grounding in.
Well, we're going to find out, because Borderlands is coming to the screen.
Okay. Where?
By Lionsgate. So
okay.
We don't have a date yet, but it's been fully shot, so it's coming.
Who's starring in it?
There are a whole bunch of people starring in it, but Jack Black is in it, among others.
Okay. All right. So it'll be funny. I wanted make sure we have time to cover some of the other things that we need to cover. One is business models. But before we get to business models, I really want to talk about diversity and inclusion in gaming. I'll point out that Take-Two is convening a panel in this conference around diversity and inclusion, because I gather that is a big priority for you, Strauss. How would you grade the gaming industry at this moment in time? I ask each of you that around diversity and inclusion. Traditionally, it has been abysmal, and it's been a point of focus for a few years for the industry. How do you think you're doing as an industry, and then as companies? You can address it specifically.
Well, I'll start. You have to start by saying, no matter how you're doing, much more has to be done. Look, I come from this traditional background, which was just the definition of a closed, old, white boys club. Sharon, you know that to be the case. And, it took a crowbar to open it up, and a lot of hard work. And now there's a great deal of gender diversity in traditional entertainment, but there's still not a lot of ethnic diversity, nowhere near as much as there ought to be. And interactive entertainment was no better than that. It comes from the world of software engineering, and that's a very, historically a very white business, and historically a very male business. We've made a great deal of progress in the industry. We at Take-Two have made a great deal of progress. We are exceedingly gender diverse at all levels at Take-Two, including the senior-most levels. This is not a, count up the names. This is actually the most senior levels of our company are.
Do you have a number attached to it? Like, do you know what the percentage of gender?
Yeah, it's not 50-50, but it's probably 40%, close to it at Take-Two group wide. So it's quite diverse, but it's not matching the population, obviously. But you get into ethnic diversity, and we still have a lot of work to do, although we're doing vastly better than we used to. So I probably shy away from
because you've made it a focus, or because you made it a priority.
A priority. It's been a priority for years, and it's not just because it's the right thing to do. It's because it's a smart thing to do. A diversity of voices, diversity of backgrounds is consistent with making great entertainment. So I think, what would the grade be for the industry? Bad. I mean, I don't want to shame anyone, because everyone is trying to do well.
It's yourselves and your colleagues. So I mean,
it is. It's bad. Everyone knows it's bad. It's way better than it was. It needs to get way better than it is.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's not lost on me that you have two white men on this panel answering this question, right? And you
didn't say old white men, but you could have said that.
in this case, Strauss is a young man, but. I think Strauss hit the nail on the head when I think about our grade relative to the customers we aspire to earn through the products that we build. And I think our team should represent the players and the customers when I look at what the planet as our opportunity, when I think about gender diversity, racial diversity, and that's our aspiration. As Microsoft, we're public. Like we print every fall, we print our stats, and we've talked about doubling senior representation of the company. And I like being public about our goals and the progress that we make. But I agree with Strauss. When we talk about how we would grade, it's a poor grade. And it's a grade
like a C. It sounds like a C. It sounds like a C right now.
I think a C might be generous, but I also
C might be generous.
I know there's a lot of effort that's going into it. I think, Sharon, you're doing the right thing. We have to see it, we have to name it, and then we have to own the problem and work it. And that's so the fact that it's a conversation, the fact that progress is being made. I know Strauss's leadership team, and I know when he makes those statements that those statements are true. And I know it's something that the industry is focused on, but also as somebody who's been in this industry for a couple decades, I know where we've come from. And I would say it's not just in the representation of our teams, but also in the toxicity that we can find online and in some of the communities.
Right.
And I really take seriously the responsibility, and I'll pick Minecraft again. How many kids have their first social interaction using our properties and our networks, and the role that we can play as Microsoft in help setting constructive social norms in the new environment, where you see so much of the anonymity of the internet and online creating this real bifurcation of discourse, where I think in gaming, bringing people together, the power that we have with the new generation coming up, it's something that we really believe in Team Xbox, and as an industry, I believe, in coming together to create safe and inclusive places for conversations and relationships to be built. And I think it's one of the powers of the medium that it's not just who I live near or who I go to school with. The power of gaming can actually connect people from anywhere on the planet, from any socioeconomic background. And they can come together playing GTA, playing Fortnite, playing Minecraft, pick your game, and come together. And I actually believe that the output of this, if we do it right, is actually positive on society, that we create more social bonds beyond just the people I see on a daily basis. And that kind of social contact theory integration will be a good thing for the planet. That's our hope.
I mean, I think it can be. I know that I'll probably after this live stream, we'll get a ton of emails from women saying you didn't ask about this, that, or other, because we take very seriously women's empowerment here at TheWrap and devote quite a lot of time and effort just to that issue, in addition to diversity and inclusion. But in gaming, it feels like I wonder what you feel Microsoft can do, because a lot of those conversations happen way outside your purview, outside your control.
Well, they do and they don't. One, I think we have to be public about what we stand for, even when we know that our track record and even our daily lived experience isn't perfect. But if we're public about what we stand for and the goals that we aspire to have, I mean, I want this team to be a place where everybody feels safe and included to do their absolute best work. And I believe there's a positive business outcome for that, but I also believe there's more positive outcomes than just the business that it helped drive. So being public about what we aspire to, we also have hundreds of millions of people that come to our services every month to interact. And we spend a lot of money and evolve our technology to ensure that the interactions that happen between people are constructive. Even things like parental control systems that we built in on both spending and social interactions on our network. I mean, that's not just for our games. Strauss's games that run on our platform get the same level of support. And this is, there is an interaction that we can apply. There is technology that we can apply as a company that can help create a better and more inclusive social environment online in the experiences that people have. We've got a long way to go. It is a technology problem, but I like being at Microsoft when we have big technology problems to go solve, where AI and machine learning can help us. And that's a big focus for us right now, because we have to navigate those spaces in order for this art form to reach its true potential, in my view.
Well, we will certainly come back to this topic in the future because it's a priority. I know it's a priority for both of you, and we look forward to the roundtable conversation we're going to get to have at the Grill around that too. I wanted to circle back to talk about sort of the shifting business models, which is, obviously Strauss, you like selling your games to people, so they have it, and you have ka-ching that, but so much is moving towards subscription across pretty much every industry. It could be makeup, it could be obviously entertainment. Phil, talk a bit about how you have approached this shifting business model landscape and how it's working.
Yeah, I don't think about it as shifting, and I'm not trying to be kind of pedantic and picking on the words. I think about business model as actually key to the creative that a creator uses to build their property. And I think a diversity of business models allows for the most diverse creative output. And we love the retail model. We love people buying games. We love people investing in the games that they buy, and by buying new content and other things. It's a huge part of our business. But I also think the diversity of business models can make gaming more accessible to more people. So when we think about the growth of Game Pass, which is our subscription, we think about it as bringing more games to more people, but not as a replacement of retail. In fact, we had our biggest retail year ever last year, while our subscriptions were growing. When I think about free to play, which is people giving away games and then they monetize the games through the engagement that people have, I think that's a business model that works for certain creative output. And as I said, I think the continued evolution of ads and other things as business models for games will just bring more creative to bear. So for us, it's not about one taking over another. I think the diversity of business models is a strength of the interactive entertainment business, and I hope to see that continue to grow.
Strauss, how about you? Have you thought about that? I'm sure you have thought about that. What a silly question.
Yeah. I've definitely thought about it. And Phil and I have spent a lot of time talking about it, actually. So look, we think that any business model, first and foremost, has to serve the interest of the consumer. And not to talk about interactive entertainment, but I'll go back to makeup because you mentioned it. Everyone's
bad example, but okay, yeah.
Well, no, because everyone's holy grail these days is a subscription. Why wouldn't it be? Of course, you want to get paid every month for something, month in, month out. And Netflix's valuation, which is based on the number of subscribers, has not been lost on a lot of people.
Right.
So I think a lot of entertainment companies, linear and interactive, have sort of been searching more for market caps than for their consumers. And you have to start by saying what's good for the consumer. So the offering has to offer great value to the consumer at the price at which it's offered. And that means you have to know what your consumer wants. And in interactive entertainment, unlike linear entertainment, it's not clear that consumers want hundreds of different titles at any given time because that's not what they consume. In the case of linear entertainment, an average American household consumes 150 hours a month. Interactive entertainment is more like 45 hours. Of that 150 hours of linear entertainment, we're talking about over 100 properties. In the case of 45 hours of interactive entertainment, we're talking about 2, 3, or 4 properties. So you have to make sure that what you're offering to consumers is something that they want. Phil didn't pitch his own service, which is impressive given that he could have. But I think last time we got about 30 million subs, Phil, right? Something like that.
The last public number we've announced is 18. Just
okay. For some reason, I thought.
Oh, but it's really 30.
It's more than 18. Anyhow, the point is, it's a big number. So clearly, they are serving. They are serving.
You guys, like, every time I talk to people in gaming, it's like, it's such a better business than entertainment. It's just.
Well, it is. So, but the question is,
film.
does that grow to 200 million? And it only can if it's serving people really well. So in our view, we have to think first about what serves consumers. And we think that subscription models, given the metrics I just gave you, are better suited to catalog properties than they are to frontline properties. And certainly from the publisher's point of view, that's correct, because as you point out, naturally, when we invest a lot of money in something and our creators put 5 or more years of their heart and soul and lifeblood into a property, we need to create the right amount of value for that property. So from our point of view, and it's just one person's and one company's point of view, we see the coexistence of models where we continue to make frontline products available on a one-off basis for a certain price. And then as we get down the pricing chain and the time chain, also making those properties available selectively for subscription. And largely that's what we've done so far. However, we have to be where the consumer is. We are commercial people. I think we're smart people. We know we need to be in a place of being of service, and we're open-minded.
That was, we'll watch where your decision-making goes on that. Well, Strauss Zelnick and Phil Spencer, thank you so much for joining me at The Grill. It's been a fascinating conversation.